Welcome back to Travel Support Thursday, number 10.
It's so nice to be back.
One.
We were gone for a little bit.
Yeah. And I feel like we need to celebrate the backness of this, being back at home.
Backness?
I feel like we got to celebrate the being backness of this, right? Like, it's exciting. Back at home.
Back,
wrapped
recovered
up.
from our cold.
Yes, all that stuff. And there's only one right way to celebrate that,
Travel Thursday. Wow.
Travel Thursday. We're back from New Zealand.
And we have a new channel.
So what we originally wanted to do is to keep this podcast right here on this main channel, just kind of put all of our stuff in one home. But the YouTube algorithm, for as smart as it is also pretty dumb. It's also pretty dumb. So what it was doing is it wasn't really like separating the audience for, let's say, people that are just interested in the podcast from the people who are also interested or maybe just interested in our 3 Days in X videos. So it was showing our podcast videos to people who were just not all that interested in it. And then we were getting all sorts of like confused comments like, hey, where are your 3 Days in X videos? What's going on with that? You're releasing too many of these. We totally get that and we understand that. But we love making this podcast and we love answering your guys' questions and helping you in the most direct way that we can think of. And we definitely want to keep this thing going. And that's the intention. It's just, we just got to make the YouTube algorithm happy. All you got to do is just click on the link down in the description. That'll lead you over to our new channel called Travel Support Thursday. Hit subscribe.
Really helps us out.
Right back in business, making these things every single Thursday, answering your questions. It'll be great. It'll be great.
And the jingle lives on.
And the jingle lives on. So all future Travel Support Thursdays, as well as all the previous ones, all of them are moving over to that new channel. This is going to be the last one that's right here on the main channel. And we're just leaving it here as like a big signboard for people who came to our main channel looking for a podcast to say like, hey, go on over there. Go on over there to the podcast channel.
Today on our 10th Travel Support Thursday, we're answering your questions about where to stay when you're in Japan. We're talking about new boarding policies for airlines and what we learned from our New Zealand camper trip. So our first question comes from Bethany Hopkins, 1495, who asks, do you have any recommendations on where to stay in Japan for a first-time one-week trip? Hotels versus VRBO rentals? She's flying from Honolulu.
Cool.
I mean, I guess there's a lot of different ways you can tackle this question. Is it questions about where physically you should stay? Like what locations, what city in the entire country? Or is this a hotel versus like, is this accommodations question?
So I can say concretely that if it was my first time going to Japan and I only had a week, I would spend that week in Tokyo. That's where I would go.
My first solo trip was to Japan, and I think I did about a week. And I think I mean, it was a jam-packed week, but I spent 3 days in Tokyo, 3 days in Osaka, and 2 days in Kyoto. So that's like 8 days.
That's so fast.
And then I made my way back to Tokyo on the way back and flew out.
Okay.
So it is really, really fast, but I think it's very doable, especially if you've only got a week.
Yes. But I think the more interesting question is like, would I stay in VRBO versus would I stay in Airbnb or what would I do? And so I think we've solved this. So after all of our trips to Japan, we've kind of like circled into this idea that the right way to do it, for us at least, is to stay at a hotel that has an onsen built into it.
Or Sento, as
or
they call it. Public bath is what they call them.
And there are a couple of different brands of hotels that have these that are in like the budget category. And one of them is definitely Dormy Inn. And we love the Dormy Inn hotels.
We've heard that a lot of these hotels actually, if you sign up for their like rewards program, if you could figure out how to like do the translations and sign up, you get discounts actually.
Yes. Yeah. And it's great. And there's also this new chain called Super Hotels that also has onsens built into it. And all these, depending on where you stay in the country, are somewhere between like $55 and $110 per night. They're all like right in that range of hotels. And it's so insanely luxurious to just have access to this like public bath onsen that I would honestly give up any other hotel perk, including literally a comfortable bed.
To start with, the hotels in Japan are just next level. And I think I never grew up loving hotels, to be honest. When my family and I would travel, I dreaded staying in hotels. And maybe it was because they were always like Hotel 8s, Motel 8s, whatever they're called. You know, they weren't. The only hotel that I really felt remotely interested in was DoubleTree because they had chocolate chip cookies and they were warm. But I always ended up, this is going to sound really, really gross, but I always ended up invariably with an eye infection
Huh.
or some kind of bug bite, something that just didn't make me sleep well. So I craved home. I hated going to hotels. And then we started traveling in Asia and Japan specifically. The hotels are, they're tiny, but they're efficient and they're super clean. They're
Yes.
super detail oriented. Like the amenities is really next level. Like
Oh yeah.
every single hotel we've stayed at in Japan, you get access to little combs, toothbrushes, face lotion, face toner, like all these things
Plus the
that
public bath. And do you remember that place in Oita that we stayed at that literally gave you noodles at night before you go to bed? They just made you fresh noodles and you could just go down and get them and they were absolutely delicious.
Yes, that was a Dormy Inn, by the way.
Yes. So Dormian, I mean, trust me, we aren't sponsored by them or anybody else.
No.
But we just love their style of hotel. I think they really focus on the things we care about, which are these like cool amenities, the public bath, things like that. And they absolutely cut back in basically every other way of stuff that we don't care about. And that's perfect.
And I know that a lot of people care about space and like where to put things in. Some people complain a lot about like the size of hotel rooms in Japan. But I actually think like if we're in Japan, we're using the room to sleep essentially.
Yeah.
And everything else. So for us, having that space isn't really that much of a necessity, but having access to the amenities is really, really cool, especially the ones that have the public baths.
Yes.
Also, I have a lot of feelings about this one. It's just, can you tell I love hotels now? I forgot to talk about the robes, the slippers that you get. I mean, just.
We may or may not have a few of those slippers right behind us that we took from those various hotels.
They're just our next level. They take care of you. They take care of you.
So the other part of the question, Airbnbs, VRBOs, etc. So I think the hostels in Japan are great. All of them are great if that's the type of budget you're on.
Yes, yeah.
Airbnb and VRBO, unless you got a group of like 5 or larger, I don't think it makes financial sense to go with it, nor does it make comfort sense to go with it. I think a lot of the like Airbnb/VRBO, and VRBO is not a big thing there. I'd really look at Airbnb first just for availability. It's always some like really old apartment in generally some area of the city that you don't necessarily want to stay in.
And I think with all the fees now, cleaning fees, service fees, like it doesn't offer you that much difference. I mean, we've definitely stayed in Airbnbs with friends in Tokyo, I think specifically.
Yeah.
But like what we got for what it was, really, really, we got the Airbnb so that we could all hang out together. And that was the primary purpose. But the rooms themselves and the place itself didn't offer that much more.
No, not really much at all.
Especially for the price.
Yeah, like I think that this like hotel with the dope amenities and the built-in onsen, I think that that's as good as it gets for traveling to Japan.
There are a lot of different options in Japan across the entire country, and specifically in the bigger cities like Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka. It depends largely on if you're traveling by yourself or you're traveling with other people. But I think we're definitely, especially for the two of us, we're definitely into the hotel category. But I think one thing that, I don't know, I think everybody should try once at least in Japan are the capsule hotels.
Oh, those are really cool.
Yeah.
I wouldn't stay a week in a capsule hotel.
Oh, maybe not.
I would stay one night just to be like,
experience
that was
it.
fun. Or if I'm like the night before I fly out, capsule hotel's perfect for that.
Yeah.
But a week in a capsule hotel, I think would be a bit much.
Well, but the only reason I say that is because when you're solo traveling, like I stayed exclusively in capsule hotels because it didn't make sense for me to pay, $100 a night, $80 a night for a big hotel room when it was just me. So I loved I loved the availability of just rooms or bunk beds or just a small space to sleep in every single night, a place to store my luggage, and a lot of them also happen to have the amenities that we talk about.
Oh, right.
Like the public baths.
Yes.
The
especially
lotions,
that one in Osaka that we stayed at. Yes.
Skincare there. Amazing. I can't get over it. And I would say we almost always use Agoda or Google to look at the areas that we want to stay in Japan. And almost always Agoda and booking directly through the hotel has been the cheapest.
Yeah, it's one or the other always. And it can be sometimes hard to find these hotels' websites. So if you use like hotels.google.com,
Mm-hmm.
it'll search all of the other various booking things. Like on the last one that we booked from, on the last one that we had, it was much cheaper through Priceline.
Mm-hmm.
Inexplicably, I would have never checked there, not in a million years.
Yeah.
But that tool searches all of them for you. So I think that that's how we'd approach it. Probably like a couple of days in Tokyo, a couple of days in Osaka, a couple of days in Kyoto.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be a whirlwind of a trip, and then
Yeah.
trying to stay at like one of those dormians or APAs so that way you have access to an onsen as often as frequently possible.
Yeah.
I think that's how we'd approach. Yeah.
It's funny that you say that that's a whirlwind trip when literally we have a 3 days in Tokyo video and a 5 days in Osaka and Kyoto video.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, I know. I know that not everybody has a lot of time. In fact, we frequently don't have a ton of time to do these things, but yeah, you're just going to be like go 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 every single day, and after a week you'd probably still be good, but if you did like 2 straight weeks of that pace, you'd probably be pretty burned out. Okay.
That's our approach.
Yeah.
We love the hotels in Japan. End of story.
For sure. Okay, so what about these new new airline boarding procedures?
Okay.
Tell me the story. Lisa found them.
So I've been loving finding these articles, travel adjacent articles, but this one caught my attention because some of the headlines here are pretty divisive. United Airlines is changing their boarding procedures. So some of the headlines: new United plan for economy class boarding, window seats first, aisle seats last. United's boarding changes explained, aisle seats go last. I mean, aisle seat people are going to hate this, but
I am a dedicated aisle seat person to the core.
Yes.
But I don't care when I get on.
Well, I don't know. So starting October 26th, which is
today,
Is that
today?
Travel Thursday, United Basic Economy ticket holders, all those who have window seats will board first. Then comes the middle seat people. Then comes the aisle seat. And all of this is because United has determined that this process will save boarding time by 2 minutes.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it sounds more efficient, but also I think it's going to be chaos for at least the first.
People are going to hate it.
Yeah, because imagine if you're like traveling with your kids or your partner or whatever, and you're just like, well, see you later. And then you're just trusting your like 6-year-old to walk on the plane by himself and get into the seat by himself without you there.
Too. Like, what about those who have disabilities, or what if the elderly are traveling? And so United specifically says that the process for people traveling with children, people that are unaccompanied minors, people with disabilities, people traveling with families, they will still get priority boarding.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I think people in the first class will get priority, but then everyone else will follow kind of this group method. And maybe it won't feel that different, except like we'll look at our tickets, and maybe because I like window, I'll be like in group 3, which is the next one, and you'll be in group 5.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll just say bye to you.
It seems so. I just don't understand, because it's not the most efficient way to board. Like, you'd think the most efficient way to board a plane would be all the way from the back to all the way in the front. And if you had some way to just tell people all the way in the back to start, then you could just have the other people feeling, because what takes the longest is people like putting their stuff up overhead and taking forever to do it. And then people never sitting down and people not being able to get past to people who are further back or people who want to go to the bathroom. It's all that. And you kind of alleviate all that by just boarding from back to front.
Yeah.
But they also, I don't know who cares about this. I guess I don't. Is like what order you get on the plane. Like, why are there boarding groups at all? Like, who cares who cares if you get, why would anyone care that they
care about what order? I don't know. There's something for me.
I don't understand it at all. Why that would be like, it's like a status symbol, of course, but
sure.
Status for what? You're just like sitting on this cold airplane for 5 minutes longer than other people. And sure, it does guarantee that you'll have like more overhead bin space for all your stuff, but nobody brings stuff for the overhead anymore because it costs $1 billion to do so.
I don't know. For me, there's something about getting on the plane and just sitting there, and it's not even about being able to be the first one. It's this feeling of, I want to get settled. I want to get settled. I want to put away all my things. I have a process of like putting things underneath my seat. I have a process for taking out all my headphones, all my gear, just so I can feel ready. And I hate being the straggler. I hate being the one that's like everybody's already all settled and I have to like squeeze in. So maybe some of this will be alleviated,
Kinda.
by letting, the middle seat people go first
Yeah,
and
but still,
then
you're going to get like a guy in row 12 or whatever who's all the way at the window. And then there's also going to be someone right behind them who's in row 27. And they still have to wait for row 12 guy to get all of his stuff sorted before they can go and do it,
yeah.
before they can go and like sit in their seat. It just, I could see how it would add more efficiency than what they're doing right now, which is basically just like everybody on the boat.
well, well, based on they're kind of doing it efficiently based on like location still, but yeah, there's always going
No,
to
it's just
be.
based on how much money you paid right now. That's all it is their fare class. So if
Well,
you paid
no,
for
but
first
like
class, you're on
people.
first. And if you're in
Oh,
basic
really?
economy, you're the last group, but you could be anywhere on the plane except for in the
That's
first class cabinets. So
oh,
like
that's true.
so they just say like everybody on, and it doesn't matter if you're row 10 on a window seat or if you're row 57 in an aisle seat or
That's
whatever. Everybody
interesting.
just
I just always assumed that they boarded the groups based on location of the plane. I never thought about that. I
yeah, no,
assumed it
it's all
was
just how much
just,
money you paid.
huh.
How fancy your ticket is gets you the group, or if you have like a credit card or if you have status with them or things. It's all based on like these like social status markers
Yeah,
way more than it is about efficiency. So I think anything they do now
is
would
better
be
than what's
better
happening right now.
than just everybody get on. But still, I think this is just going to cause more confusion for a very little gain, and it's also going to like split people
I
up.
think it's gonna make people upset.
It's
I
stressed
think
out.
that's the most. I think that's the most. I mean, it sounds to me like 2 minutes, and I obviously don't understand the world of flying and getting passengers on board and the the timelines. 2 minutes to me doesn't sound like a lot, but this article is talking about how every minute counts and
Yes.
every amount of efficiency matters. And so when your flight attendants are saying, sit down, like just sit down,
Yeah.
like,
Because the
um,
flight attendants aren't getting paid until the doors are closed. And they can't close the doors until everyone's in their seat
is that
buckled in.
right?
Yes. So their pay doesn't start getting you on the plane. It's when
Hmm.
the doors close to when the doors reopen. That's when they clock in and out.
Gosh, I would love to hear if any of you out there are flight attendants, please chime in and tell us your thoughts on this
Yes.
because I assume that you guys have to deal with so much stuff on a daily basis,
Yeah.
and I would love to hear your perspective. And also would love to hear all of your thoughts. Would you do if you're flying United starting today and from here out? This applies to like all domestic and also I think to some flights in Central and South America.
Hmm. I it just it's like one other thing to think about when you're flying this
Sure.
airline. Like with Southwest, for example,
Yeah.
that it's just going to be everyone's going to be in a big line and you're going to sit wherever, right?
Wherever
Like
you can
you
fit.
understand how that goes, but with
Hmm.
United, I understand why they did it, but I
Mm-hmm.
think with how many exceptions there are to how this thing works, I just think people are going to
Yeah,
be
so
confused and it's just going to end up taking longer.
just in case you're flying United, the process for pre-boarding groups such as unaccompanied minors, people with disabilities, families with small children, and active duty military members won't change.
Hmm.
And it also remains unchanged for boarding groups 1 through 3, which I assume is like first class.
Fancy people, not
Group
us.
4 will now be reserved for passengers with middle seats. Group 5 will be exclusively for those with aisle seats.
I just keep thinking back to how sometimes airlines in Europe they board from both the front and the back
Yes,
at
yeah.
the same
I
time,
love that.
and really it just causes like absolute mass chaos because for some reason people when they're getting on a plane can't figure out am I in the back of the boat or am I in the front. So then there's just people trying to walk all the way from the back of the plane all the way to the front, and it just makes the whole thing like it should be objectively way more
But then you're
efficient.
always like trying to cross, and there's
Yeah.
like two schools of fish going.
Yeah, and there shouldn't be, but it happens anyway. And I just think that like that problem is going to happen, but like 10x with
Yeah.
this.
United said that since 2019, their boarding times have gone up by 2 minutes. So they're hoping this new policy will shave those 2 minutes. And they've tested it at 5 different airports. I don't know how many flights they've tried it at, but they said they found that it was faster.
Okay,
We'll
well,
see.
good
If
for
you
them.
guys experience it, let us know in the
Yes,
comments
if
below.
you've experienced this new boarding thing that's starting
Wilma.
today. So yeah, it's called what?
Wilma. I'm guessing, I know, I've been sitting here trying to figure out.
Window, aisle,
Well,
win.
windows in last? No. Last I assume L stands for last, but I don't know. M stands for middle. A
Aisle.
aisle.
Yeah.
It's just window
Window, middle,
middle
aisle. So
aisle.
what's the I and the L? Who knows? Are we missing something obvious here about how this acronym works? Or I feel real dumb that I can't figure out Wimal?
Wilma. No, it's Wilma.
But it's
Yeah,
not
I
though.
know. I
But
know.
it's not.
Maybe it's secretive.
Huh. We just got back from 3 weeks in New Zealand, driving around a camper van all the way from Christchurch down to Queenstown, all the way across the ferry, and then all the way up to Auckland. Basically, the entire country from south to
Feels like
north.
forever ago.
It was a beautiful time. We
Yeah.
had an amazing time there, and we're actually just about to fly off to Singapore and then Bangkok and then a handful of other places to start filming season 2 of this like 3 Days and X
And
series
we're
we've been making.
currently deep in the cave for editing the 3 weeks in New
Yes.
Zealand video.
It'll
coming
be out
soon.
sometime, hopefully this weekend. We're hoping
Soon.
we just don't want to rush it. You know, we don't want to
Yeah.
rush it. It's a big video. 3 weeks. It's
How do you encapsulate 3 weeks in such a beautiful country like New Zealand?
I don't know, but we got to figure
But we're
that
gonna
out.
try.
We
We
gotta
are
figure that
we
out.
are in the process of figuring that out. Anyway.
Yes. What we really wanted to talk about is 3 things that we thought went really well. 3 things that we thought that we like nailed on this trip to New Zealand that we had. And then 3 things that we would do totally differently.
Yeah, three things that basically we screwed up.
Yeah, which there's many more than 3. So let's start with one good thing.
Okay.
So the first good thing that I think of is that the actual camper van that we got, Sassy, which
Oh.
you guys will be introduced to Sassy very soon in this video.
She's amazing.
Can't wait for you two to meet. Can't wait for y'all to meet each other. This camper van was just the perfect size and price, and just the perfect vehicle, I think, for 2 people to go around New Zealand. We got what's called a chubby camper van, which is like a kind of big minivan with a bed in the back that can also turn into a little like table thing.
It's a Toyota. It's a Toyota Hiace. And for those of you who have watched our channel from the beginning, you'll know that we've not necessarily had the best of luck with van life in the
That's
past.
such an understatement.
I mean, there was the very first V1 Clunk Clunk, good old Clunk Clunk that we built out during the pandemic at the cabin, and wow, she was beautiful, and it was a really, really fun journey to build that with your parents, but she just didn't have it in her to keep going. And
No.
the Sprinter was just not working. Version 2 was not too long ago, a couple of years ago, when we spent a nice, I don't know how long it was, even a week, 2 weeks, it was supposed to be a month in Australia, traveling in a camper van. Unfortunately, gosh, the weather, the floods, and the van just was not working for us. It did not end so well.
Yep.
And then the third time, good old Sassy, third time's a charm.
Yeah, third time's a charm. Everything went well for the first time in our van life history. Something like catastrophic, that's maybe an overstatement, but some really gigantic, terrible thing did not happen during the process. And
I think we started to get into a groove of it. And we'll talk about this more later. And I think of course, in the video, but I think the camper van journey, while it does bring a lot of challenges for sure, it's definitely not glamorous camper vanning.
No.
No. It allowed us to see a lot of New Zealand in a lot of cool ways and experience the camping lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. Bad thing. The time of year we went. Our first mistake we made, I think, was this time of year we went. Not from a pricing perspective. We got a crazy good deal on the camper van that we got, but it rained a third of the time we were there, maybe a half of the days we were there. It was raining very frequently.
I think there were definitely a lot of times as we were traveling through, like, questioning, did we just pick the wrong time of year to come? Is this weather normally like this? I mean, we experienced a lot of extreme weather, unfortunately, and we know New Zealand has unpredictable weather, and there's a lot of changes that have happened in the climate in general, but it felt like there were times where, maybe we should have pushed back our trip a little bit. So we went We went in September. We spent the entire month of September in New Zealand, which is kind of like their shoulder season. It's generally colder at night, like it dipped down to like the 30s sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes colder. Some days it would snow, some days it would rain,
It was
some
below
days we would
freezing
have
a lot.
sun.
Mhm.
I think yeah, but that's what I think that's what you get when you choose the off season, right? Like the campsites were almost always empty or they
Yes.
were almost always available. They were really affordable.
If I had to do it again, I'd do it like right now, end of October, early November.
Yeah.
I think this would be the perfect time. It's much drier during this time of year, much warmer another like month and a half later, and you're kind
Yeah.
of getting into summer now.
Yeah.
It would also be a lot busier and maybe a little bit more expensive, but I think that we would have been able to do something every day instead of losing the days that we did because we were just waiting
Rain.
out torrential rainstorms or other things that were blocking
Yeah.
our path. Good thing number two. So a thing that we learned that we didn't know at first was that there are so many good free
Oh my
campsites.
gosh.
If
Yeah.
you have a self-contained sticker, which if you are going to New Zealand, you absolutely have to get one of those on
In
your
a van.
camper van.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a sticker that goes on the front and back of the camper van that says basically that you have a toilet inside of your camper van as well as a gray water tank. And that's called self-contained. And then that opens up this huge world of free campsites that you can stay at. There are hundreds, maybe even thousands of them throughout
Yeah.
the country. And there were so many just staggeringly beautiful campsites.
And so many free. I mean,
Yes.
we made a couple of mistakes in the very beginning just staying at holiday parks, and
Yeah.
the holiday parks are incredible, right?
Mhm.
They come with all the like amenities, they've got the power, they've got the hot showers, but we found as we were driving that the $30 or $40, which, you know, is terrible that we'd spend on some of these nice holiday parks, was just not worth it, because then you could stay at some of these incredibly beautiful, like on the water, um, on the water next to a glacier spot
Yes.
for free or for $10 sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was amazing. So many good campsites. In fact, so good that we actually could have done our entire 3-week trip there without paying for a single
For sure.
campsite the entire
Yes.
time.
Some of them were empty gravel parking lots, but incredibly close to the water, you
Yeah.
know, but they were incredible. Like for us, I think we're learning too that we don't need necessarily all the comforts when we're driving or camper vanning. As long as you have a bathroom, I'm pretty good.
So that leads on to mistake number 2 of our New Zealand trip here, which is that we drove a ton and we were in a hurry
Yes.
almost the entirety of the time because of just how big the country is, how slow the driving is everywhere you go, and just how much we wanted to see.
I think the mistake here is that we just underestimated how challenging driving here would be,
Yes.
and underestimated how much time we would need to see New Zealand. And I know that's the quintessential problem when
Yep.
we're doing these trips and travel in general, especially if you're from the US. You have a limited amount of time, and you want to see everything, but as a result, then you're driving many hours at a time. You're constantly moving. You can't really enjoy sweet moments because you're just hopping to the next.
Yeah, and that's what we were doing all the time. And I think to try to fix this, I think we would have tried to do less. I think we would have tried to do less, try to jam pack less things in. And we were just like, we were on such a tight time schedule that we would like show up in a place without even considering the weather before we got there. And then we'd get there and it'd just be like pouring rain and we just couldn't do that thing. So we ended up wasting a day just because we were in such a hurry and we didn't really think. So
I mean, even as you're saying that, though, it's so hard because I think it brings back a lot of the conversations that we've had in the last couple of weeks about slowing down versus trying to seize the day and see everything because we don't have enough time in this world. It's just like that. It's that core problem. Like when you're traveling, there's so much that you want to squeeze out every last ounce, but then you also want to savor the moments.
Right. And I think I would have done, especially in New Zealand, especially on this type of campervan trip, we did way more savoring and way less driving. I think I would have tried to tackle less overall and like limited the scope more of the trip.
Would you have stopped more?
probably, we did spend, we like drove and drove and drove and drove
Yeah, every single day.
every single day for hours. So I think I would have just tried to like do less, try to just do less
Mm.
and then go deeper into the stuff that we really like.
But then I think the things that were really, really positive. So this was my first time in the North Island too.
Mm.
So we did both the South Island. We did 2 weeks on the South Island
Right.
and 1 week on the North Island, which I think was the perfect amount. Asterisk. I wish we had more time everywhere.
Right.
But on the North Island, I think the surprisingly really cool and fun things that I didn't know that I would enjoy was Hobbiton and the glowworm caves.
Oh, yeah. Both of those were great. And both of those are like mega touristy things that
Yes.
generally we're not overly
Yes.
attracted to, or we like kind of avoid.
Yeah.
But we had
So much
it
fun.
was such a blast at both of those
Yeah.
things. Expensive as heck.
Yes.
No question about it, but was just stunning and beautiful. And the Hobbiton was so esoterically nerdy and weird.
Even though
and
I'm
wonderful.
not like I've seen all the Lord of the Rings and I know generally about the Lord of the Rings, I was like skeptical. I was like, I don't know that I want to pay that much money. But as soon as I got there, I was like, I'm into this. I'm a hobbit. I want to live here.
Right.
For me, it really reminded me to not write off touristy things just because they're
Mhm.
touristy. Like things are touristy for a reason and things are popular for a reason. We know that not everybody is going to be willing to pay a lot of money to go see attractions like that. But there's something special about, for me at least, there's something special about these two experiences because they feel so specific to New Zealand.
Yes. I don't. It was just such a cool experience, such a great experience, and I would add one more onto that.
Mm.
Going to Te Papa was definitely a big. I mean, we could have spent days there at New Zealand's National Museum, and we normally hate museums,
Yeah.
but
I think to like clump up this like good thing number 3, like the North Island was where also like I felt like I just got a better understanding. I don't want to say good because I don't pretend to understand completely the history and complexities of New Zealand, but visiting Te Papa and seeing the North Island really helped me see how New Zealand is confronting their history and their present.
Oh yeah.
Like, I won't go into too much detail because I'm not a history teacher and I don't pretend to understand what it's like to live there. But New Zealand in general and North Island specifically was where I had core memories of seeing every single sign in both English and Maori, English and Te Reo Maori, everything.
Yeah.
I think, and then I had to think about the last time I actually remember seeing languages like that everywhere where we live. And I'm still thinking and processing, how to sum this up, but I felt like I left New Zealand and specifically the North Island with this overall question and feeling of like, what would our world look like if we all approached our cultures the way that New Zealand did? I know this is a huge generalization, but it was incredible to see every single sign in both English and Te Reo Maori. Or it was incredible to see how much celebration of Maori culture there was. It wasn't just like you get a month here.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me was like my good thing number 3. Yes, the glowworm caves were awesome. Hobbiton was awesome. Touristy spots were awesome. But the North Island and just highlighted so many parts and so many aspects of New Zealand culture that we'd seen throughout the entire trip that just like capped it for me.
Yeah, I feel like we really got to experience like a lot of different sides of New Zealand culture, especially once we made it to the North Island.
It's very inspiring.
Yeah, super inspiring. So for our final mistake in New Zealand that we made, we didn't budget enough money at all.
Yeah.
At all.
Spoiler alert.
I think $100 per day, like we try to do everywhere, can work in New Zealand, but you'd be sacrificing so much by trying to make it work that you'd just be missing out on way too much. Okay, so first, our camper van itself was $30 a day, 30 US a day.
Yeah, that's a really good deal.
A campsite each night, if you did decide to pay for that, would be somewhere between like 20 $25 per night.
We could have done it for free, but we didn't
Yes. And
all the
then
time.
gas per day,
Mm.
if you're driving as far as we did, was like $50 to $60 US per day.
Yeah. That
So,
was probably the
if you
kicker.
just had those things up, you're already at $100 per day. No food, definitely no restaurants, definitely can't afford to go to Milford Sound, definitely
Mhm.
can't afford to do Hobbiton or, any of the other things.
Yeah.
All you're doing is just driving all day, every day, staying in free campsites, and eating probably like spaghetti for dinner every single night. That is the $100 per day budget. And I think you'd just be sacrificing too much of the experience to try it on that one. But at like $120 or $130 per day, I think that opens up the possibilities a lot more. And that's just like a couple hundred more dollars than we brought than we
Sure.
normally would.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think there's something different about a 3-week trip versus a 3-day trip anywhere. Like in a 3-day trip, you're not traveling every single day.
For
You're not
sure.
taking a train every single day.
mhm.
You're not driving every single day. So I think trying to see a big country and a place like New Zealand requires just more time and more budget.
Yeah, more time, more budget.
I think it's doable if all you wanted to do was drive and see New Zealand
Mhm.
and go on hikes, because there are a ton of free things to do
Yeah.
for sure, like
Yeah.
free camping, free hikes, free museums. There's so many incredible free things to do in New Zealand. But yeah, I think for us, we're learning that there are definitely some experiences that we just didn't want to miss out on. And so that required more of a budget than we planned for.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we got to see a lot of really, really cool, epic
Oh,
things.
yeah. Such a great time that we had in New Zealand. We can't wait to show you guys this video that's going to
Yeah.
be coming out soon. That is it for today's episode. Again, please hop on over to the new Travel Support Thursday channel. Hit subscribe over there so that we can keep watching these videos. And yeah, we'll see you next Thursday.
Bye bye.